make sure it actually goes through because y'all know how these things be going. Yeah, okay, we're live. We're basically seeing continuing fallout. Hi, YouTube. Welcome back. We're seeing continuing fallout from the Signal Gate drama that took place, that has been taking place all week, really. Today's what, Wednesday? We found out about this initially on Monday/Tuesday. But as you know, for those of you who may have missed it, essentially, our nation's top security apparatus leaders went to not their government issued phone. They went to a Signal app to have a conversation about war plans. Now, we talked about this extensively yesterday. So if you saw the video, if you heard the segment, you're already familiar with this. But what we're also seeing is that the fallout, as I get my newspapers, has been global. According to the Financial Times, Trump aides are playing down war plan leak after sloppy security triggers dismay. The world is dismayed. You know who else is probably dismayed? The undercover CIA agent who was also in the chat. Here's why this matters. When you are using Signal, and this is something for those of you who need a private security or international security approach lesson, Malcolm Nance was on this morning on Urban View Mornings, did a phenomenal job. I'm going to give you the Lurie Daniel synopsis of what he said, Lurie Daniel favorite synopsis of what he said. Basically, when you're, and remember I told y'all yesterday how my judge Sterling Johnson Jr., he's now deceased. He was at one point being considered to head up the FBI. And we were talking in chambers one day because I was his law clerk. We were talking in chambers one day about, people being able to listen to what we were talking about in chambers. And he kind of laughed at us because he was like, he calls me by the nickname that he uses for me, which was Dennis, because he did not remember people's names. He called me Dennis as in the menace, because I've always been this way. He was like, Dennis, they don't need to be next door to hear what you have to say. They don't even have to be in the same community that you're in to hear what you have to say. With the proper materials and tools, I can aim a device at the windows of the room you are talking of, a building that you are in. And from the way your voices are vibrating off of the windows, I can pick up and detect exactly what you're saying. So global international security is so far beyond what we people who just use cell phones understand it to be. When you are in a country like Russia, yes, I have been to Russia, both to Moscow and St. Petersburg, because that's where we went for a couple of times when we were in high school, because when you live in Germany, you get to see the rest of the world in weird ways. It's military. Take advantage of it if you can. So we're in, and what we understood even then was that, and this is before cell phones, but we understood that the international apparatus for trying to determine who, what, where, how, and why, if you are a foreign entity trying to get information on what either your allies or your ops are engaged in, very intense work. If you are in Russia today and you have a cell phone, anybody who is a part of the KGB, which is like our CIA/FBI kind of combined, kind of not, they can walk by in the same airspace that you're breathing, wave a cute little, maybe a pen, maybe they're just walking around with a pen in their hand, and they can scan all your shit because it ain't safe. It's not secure. It's just a cell phone. Signal is also really important for us to focus on this app, because did you know that just a few weeks before these ding-dong dorks decided to go on this app to have conversation about how to start and manipulate and engage in this war, which is going to implicate Yemen and Iran, which is going to come up again in just a second. They were on this Signal app, and they added to the Signal app one of the people who were handling negotiations with the Kremlin about the Ukraine. So there's an American in Russia who is going into Moscow, going into the Kremlin to speak with Vladimir Putin and the Russian counterparts about ending the war in Ukraine. Right before he enters the building, and we know this because of the investigative reporters who have tracked this all out, he is added to the Signal group with his private cell phone number. It's also important to know that just a few weeks ago, as I was just saying, the Department of Defense, which Pete, his own mama said he's trash, Hegseth runs, put out a statement that said, hey man, Signal ain't safe, y'all. Y'all can't use Signal. That's why we don't have Signal. You can't even download it on the government phones. You got to use your government phones. You got to use your SCIF. You got to use your secure compartmentalized information center. You can't be talking about this stuff on the phone, and you can't be on Signal. That's why you can't download it onto a government phone. These idiots warned themselves that Signal was not safe. They said Russia on Signal. They said China on Signal. They said Iran is on Signal. They said, why are you on Signal? We can't be on Signal. We the government. I'm sorry. I'm using language that is stereotypically identified with Blackness to convey stupidity. That is an error. My apologies. We don't need to use our government phones. We can use the private ones, even though we just told every goddamn body not to do it because it's not safe. You see how accents make a difference? They do. That's what's happening right now. And so, as this man who is going into the Kremlin to negotiate with Russia, he takes his private phone that has just been added to Signal, and he is now in a building that is one massive spying device. Oh, and then he brings home, I just saw this in the reports, he brings home with him a painting that Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, had put together specifically for Donald Trump. And this man who is there to negotiate about ending the war in Ukraine walks that painting onto the plane that was taking him back to the White House. He brings it into the White House. Did anybody who was on the Signal group decide, did they scan the painting? Did anybody check if the painting got any bugs? Is the paint on the painting listening to what y'all saying? These are the stupidest people in the world. And if nothing else, the only reason I'm grateful for this moment is that hopefully the fever of convincing the rest of the world that white Americans are the best and the brightest has broken. Actually, I think it has broken internationally. It's only Americans who still believe that the rest of the world believes that. This is where we're at. This is where we're at. 866-801-8255. 866-801-TALK. Then I read that we, in addition to making, what is his name? Robert F. Kennedy, the head of our healthcare system. This man is not a doctor. This man has no medical background. He's a lawyer. He's an environmental lawyer. I don't even know how good of a lawyer he was because he was virtually unemployed. Not only is he in charge of our healthcare, but we also now find that according to reports, they have brought in someone at the head of his agency. They brought in somebody who is hired specifically to investigate vaccines and a potential connection to autism, which is a theory that has been widely debunked ever since the first doctor who put out that study had to withdraw the study because his study could not be replicated. Here's the thing about medical studies. If your medical study has validity, we know that because when you say, I did a study and I poured the water into the oil and they separated. Well, if that's your study, then everybody else who's in the scientific community should be able to take the ingredients that you use, the description of the study that you engage in, and replicate the findings. That's how we know there is validity. That's peer review. That's how we know there's validity to what you said. But what we found after that man put out that study that said there was a connection between vaccines and autism, that nobody else could replicate the study. That's why he had to withdraw the study, because it was proven to be factually inaccurate. Well, child, the Department of Health and Human Services just hired somebody to come in and re-examine the analysis. They didn't bring in a doctor who has no bias. They didn't bring a researcher who is not biased. They brought in David Geyer. David Geyer is a vaccine skeptic who has a lengthy history of promoting false claims about the connections between immunization and autism. Could y'all just please go to Canada's CDC and sign up there for updates, because that's how you're going to know what's happening with medicinals. I get updates from the CDC in Canada now because I went to their website and I signed up. I get updates from the World Health Organization now because after America withdrew, thanks to these ding-dongs who are running the goddamn place, I was like, well, I still need access to healthy information. I still need to know what's going on with the rest of the world, because I knew that something was coming back in January of 2020 because I was watching international news and I was like, what's happening in China? And it's been happening in China since the end of 2019. What the hell's going on? And how come now it's in France? Why it's in Italy? Oh my God, is now it's in England? Holy crap. Which is why I was not surprised when they shut everything down. And I actually closed down my office 2 weeks before New York State shut down, because I was like, this shit is coming. I want everybody to work from home for the next 2 weeks. Maybe this thing will blow over. It ain't blowed over yet. So there's that. But that's who they now have in charge of the processes for determining what's happening with our vaccines. Then, as I mentioned, this whole situation with the CIA agent is now in the group chat. I think I mentioned that part. There is an undercover CIA agent who was named and then put into the group chat of Signal, circling back to the top of the hour. Which means that when that man walked into the Kremlin with his phone that was connected to the Signal conversation, and the people in Russia was like, look at this idiot. Look at this idiot. He just gave us all the information we need. You know, as soon as he left, they was on the phone. They was on the phone talking to everybody, because that's how these things work. Oh, And I've said we're going to talk about the post office today. We're actually going to talk about the post office tomorrow and the dismantling thereof. There's a lot that we have to get to yet still in this story, in this conversation today. We have Representative James Tallarico, who's going to be joining us in just a minute to talk about the Texas state's effort to take over public education by defunding it and giving it to vouchers. Y'all, the news is newsing. The news is newsing. The fallout is falling out. And quite frankly, I have been flabbergasted. I have been so flabbergasted. My gaster has been flabbered. My flabber has been gasted. That is how flabbergasting all of this news is. So I want everybody to take a deep breath, because I myself have this morning alone asked myself, like, how am I going to cover all this? There's way too much. This is too much to get to. Everybody take a deep breath. Go hug somebody that you love and who will not mind you hugging them, and will give you consent to do so. And then you can get a hug back from them, and then get connected. Participate in organizations, join a group. If it's not the Brooklyn, look, I said the Brooklyn NAACP. If it's not the NAACP, Urban League, National Action Network, join an indivisible group. Get active, get organized. Because one of the things that Malcolm Nance also said on air this morning when he was talking with Dr. Greg Carr and Lamont King was that in just a few weeks, don't be surprised if we at war with Iran. And thank you to the Nubian who dropped this information. It was the B-2 bombers that America has just moved 7 B-2 bombers off of the region, right around the region that borders Iran. They don't do that for play. That's a third of the B-2 bomber apparatus that America has. Then you got JD, junior varsity cheerleading Vance, and his wife going over to Greenland, because America is going to try to take Greenland. I fully believe this, in addition to whatever it is they're going to try to do to invade Canada. This is how colonizers do. And considering that the entire country right now is in an uproar over the fact that the goddamn egg prices are too high, what's the best thing that an unpopular president who's got terrible policies that nobody likes can do to change everybody's mind? Go to war. 866-801-8255. Why am I giving out the number? We got to go. YouTube, thank you so much. This is a quick one. In it and hit it. Oh, TMFJ and everybody who's doing the super supports. I appreciate y'all. I be trying to say thank you, but then the chat be closed and I can't get in there to say thank you, but I do appreciate the additional support. Make sure y'all also check out the podcast. We had the latest episode this morning. Lurie breaks it down. Y'all remember layaway? Mm-hmm. Well, now we got layaway for food delivery. And what could possibly go wrong? So many things, so many things. I'm just going to encourage y'all to check out Lurie Breaks It Down. We broke down this connection, this partnership between Klarna, the buy now, pay later system, and DoorDash food deliveries. So you can buy 4 tacos on Tuesday and pay for them in 4 additional payments. Isn't this the same country that Black people lost 50% of their collectively held wealth in the housing foreclosure crisis that just took place in 2008? Oh, and the Latinos too? Damn, what could possibly go wrong? Listen to the podcast to find out. We got to go to commercial break. 866-801-8255. 866-801-TALK is the number. I appreciate y'all, YouTube. Bye-bye. Urban View. We'll be right back.